Some people drink coffee right before bed and sleep just fine. Others can't even have a cup of tea in the afternoon without lying awake at midnight. This isn't about willpower. It's biology, plain and simple. The same amount of caffeine creates a completely different picture in two different bodies. There's a clock inside your brain, and it's running right now. Whether you notice it or not, in this video, we'll look at how that clock works, why it sometimes throws you off, and just how complex sleep actually is. This clock has a name, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. It sits in your hypothalamus, just above the point where your optic nerves cross. It contains roughly 10,000 neurons on each side, yet it influences nearly every system in your body. Almost every organ in your body has its own small clock. Your liver, your heart, even your skin keeps its own rhythm. Scientists call these peripheral clocks, but all of them stay connected to the SCN. The SCN sends them a signal about what time of day it is, and they adjust their own rhythms based on that. Light hits your retina, the signal travels straight to the SCN. This journey from your eye to your brain happens in a tiny fraction of a second. That's how your brain knows whether it's day or night. When it gets dark, the SCN signals the pineal gland to release melatonin. Melatonin doesn't knock you out, it simply tells your body it's time to slow down and rest. Your internal clock isn't exactly 24 hours. It varies slightly from person to person. For most people, it runs a bit longer than 24 hours. That's why scientists call it circadian spots, from Latin, meaning roughly around a day. Exposure to light shifts and resets this clock every single day. Without that reset, your sleep schedule would keep drifting later and later. In fact, in experiments where people were completely isolated from light, their sleep times were observed to genuinely drift day by day. The clearest real-world example of this is jet lag. You feel exhausted when your body clock doesn't match the local time. After crossing several time zones, it can take the SCN days, sometimes weeks, to adjust to the new time zone. Interestingly, traveling east tends to be harder to adjust to than traveling west. That's because flying east means moving your clock forward, while flying west means moving it backward. And it's easier for your body to push its clock back than forward. Sleep isn't a single state. It unfolds in cycles of roughly 90 minutes. Within each cycle, there are several stages, and each one carries out a different job. When you fall asleep, you first pass through a light sleep stage. Your body temperature starts to drop and your heart rate slows. Then you move into deep sleep, also called slow wave sleep. This is the deepest stage of sleep. Early in the night, you spend more time in this stage. Brain activity slows down, growth hormone is released, memory consolidation begins. Here, waking up from this stage is harder than from the others. If someone wakes you during deep sleep, you'll feel groggy for several minutes. This is called sleep inertia, and the earlier you're pulled out of deep sleep, the more noticeable it is. As the night goes on, REM sleep takes up more and more time. Your eyes move rapidly. Your brain becomes highly active. In fact, brain waves during REM sleep closely resemble the patterns seen while you're awake. REM is linked to emotional processing and learning. Most vivid dreaming also happens during this stage. Here's something interesting. During REM, the large muscles in your body become temporarily paralyzed. This stops you from physically acting out your dreams. Scientists call this REM atonia. Circuits in the brainstem suppress motor neurons in the spinal cord, creating this temporary paralysis. Over the course of a night, you cycle through these stages 4 to 6 times. Each cycle serves its own purpose. Toward morning, REM stages get longer while deep sleep stages get shorter. That's why you tend to remember dreams more clearly in the early morning. This also shows something important. It's not just total sleep time that matters, but how those stages are distributed. The circadian rhythm determines when you feel sleepy. Beyond that, it influences many systems throughout your body. Short or fragmented sleep can lead to measurable changes in glucose regulation and appetite-related hormones. This effect doesn't show up after just one bad night. Research tends to focus more on repeated, ongoing sleep loss. When your body doesn't get enough rest, it starts managing its energy balance differently. Hormones like leptin and ghrelin, which are tied to appetite, are frequently examined in this research. leptin acts as a signal of fullness, while ghrelin signals hunger. Some studies show this balance gets disrupted by sleep loss, but the findings aren't consistent across every study, so there's still some disagreement among scientists on this point. Both the direction and the size of the effect remain up for debate. Exposure to light in the evening, even at low intensity, has been linked to melatonin suppression and increased wakefulness throughout the night. What matters here is that it's not just the presence of light that creates this effect, but also its timing. The same light you're exposed to during the day sends a completely different signal in the evening. When researchers measured actual light levels inside people's homes, they found that most homes were bright enough to meaningfully suppress melatonin. But this effect varied widely from person to person. Shift workers are studied frequently in this kind of research because their internal clock is constantly out of sync with the outside world. This is an active area of research. As study methods improve, the findings keep getting clearer. One important point, most of these studies show correlation, not strict cause and effect. Scientists are still gathering data here, and there isn't a clear consensus yet. So what does all of this actually have to do with everyday life, and why does it matter? Understanding the mechanism helps you make sense of the behavior. Screens emit light concentrated in the short wavelengths that your retina is most sensitive to for circadian signaling. Okay? That short wavelength is close to the blue tones found in daylight. Your retina reads that color as a daytime signal, not a nighttime one. When you're exposed to it in the evening, this has been linked to increased wakefulness throughout the night. That's the mechanism behind why using a blue lit screen before bed can disrupt your internal clock. This isn't just a theory, it's a direct result of the SCN-retina connection we talked about earlier. Not everyone's clock runs the same way. This individual difference is called your chronotype. Some people naturally wake up early and are commonly known as morning people. Others are naturally more productive later in the day. People often call these types larks and night owls, but scientists tend to describe it more as a spectrum. Most people actually fall somewhere between these two extremes. Evidence shows that chronotype has a genetic component. It isn't simply a matter of habit, it's also something that's hereditary, affecting both individuals and their family line. So being a night owl isn't about being lazy. It can be a real biological difference. Age affects chronotype too. During adolescence, the internal clock naturally shifts later, which is why teenagers tend to fall asleep and wake up later. This doesn't mean teenagers are lazy or their biological clocks genuinely run differently. As people get older, this tendency usually reverses and they start waking up earlier again. So chronotype isn't fixed. It's worth remembering that it changes over the course of a lifetime. In light of all this, here's where things stand. Sleep is a process you might think you have very little control over, but it actually runs on remarkably predictable biological rules. Next week, the drink 8 glasses of water a day rule. Where did that number actually come from? We're looking at the science behind it.